So, how has your year been so far?
Good. The front end of the year was filled with lots of random gigs and combined with teaching at home and sessions and recording and now just getting started here with Whitesnake. We had our rehearsal process and started up in the UK, and it's great to see everyone again and great to be back out.
Yeah, you mentioned that you're doing like some lessons and stuff. Do you take like physical students? Do you teach somewhere else, or is it like online, worldwide teaching?
Yeah, virtual,
Yeah.
online, yeah. Uh-huh.
How do you find that compared to like teaching in person?
Um, there's some advantages. They can record it,
Mm,
and have the video access, and obviously, have a nice digital copy right away of anything that I write out for them. The downside would be sometimes when you're trying to get somebody to set up a chord, maybe you could help their fingers
yeah,
get to the right spot.
true.
So unable to do that. So that would be one of the disadvantages, but it all evens out in the end. I think it's all right.
Yeah, I've seen that some people offer like teaching on tour. Do you do that? In location, like where you go?
Yeah, that's what I've been doing so far. I've been teaching just like three a night on the nights off.
Mm.
I find it's about right. I mean, I'm going to be playing my guitar anyway, so
Yeah,
uh,
and if you
yeah,
got nothing else to do, then
yeah, exactly. So we're playing every other day pretty much on this tour. So the way I've been doing it is on show day, no lessons, but then on the day off in the following city, maybe we get there, in the afternoon. So I'll have three lessons in the evening.
yeah. So, Whitesnake stuff aside, you also have a new project called Iconic, new debut album coming out, Second Skin, in June, right?
Yes. hmm
So, how do you remember the sort of genesis of that project? How did it all, came up to be?
It really has a lot to do with the label. Frontiers, I think,
Mm.
was looking to put together a project surrounding Nathan James, who's a great young singer, fronting his own band Inglorious these days. And I think they wanted to do something where they surrounded him with some classic rock musicians. And right about at the same time, Michael Sweet was having some dialogue with them about he and I doing a project together. And I think they thought, hey, why don't we put these two ideas together? And so that's basically where it started. Was Nathan and Michael and myself, and they said, we'll find a drummer and bass player. Don't worry about it. And I thought, okay, well, they'll probably get some, young, great players who maybe aren't big names or something. But then, much to my surprise, it ended up being Tommy Aldridge, my Whitesnake bandmate, on
Mm.
drums, and Marco Mendoza on also a good friend. And Tommy and Marco have always enjoyed playing together as a rhythm section. So that's how it all came together.
Yeah, you mentioned about there being the discussion, that you'll get the drummer and bass player eventually. Do you find that in the music business, is it hard to kind of get these professional instrumentalists? Is there like a thing that it's hard to get a bassist or a drummer, or is it relatively easy for you, to find people to play with?
Well, it all depends what it is, what type of commitment people are making and things like that. But yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just going on a case by case basis of saying how it came together with this. Sometimes the drummer is the first person you have. I mean, this was kind of started as Nathan, Michael, and myself. And yeah, like I said, I kind of thought, well, probably they mean they're just going to get some lesser known
Mm.
guys. So it was surprising that they found Tommy for it or got Tommy to do it. For me,
Yeah, for
maybe
sure,
not,
for sure.
maybe not there in their mind. I don't know, but for me, it was surprising.
Yeah, it's just that often, at least in like the circles that I am, it's always like maybe drummer and bassist are the hardest to kind of find. Capable players. Of course, you can find a lot of players, but people who can.
Yeah, well, there's lots of guitar players, that's
Yeah,
for
that's
sure.
true. Yeah, you never have shortage of guitar players.
Yeah,
That's one
lots of
thing.
guitar players, my friend.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So if I understood right, you contributed a lot to the songwriting, in terms of like riffs and guitar parts to the new debut album.
Yeah, that was pretty much the so Michael and Alessandro Del Vecchio were the co-producers. So that was kind of the vision, was um, to have it be collaborative. And so I wrote the guitar riffs in an unarranged fashion. That's how
Mm.
Michael did it with George Lynch for their records together. So what I would do is take a tempo and maybe write a pre-chorus riff, but only have it once on there. Leave a little space, verse riff, pre-chorus riff, chorus riff, bridge riff, that kind of thing. Give it to Michael, let him arrange it the way he wanted to arrange it. And if he felt, oh, there needs to be a little build there or a riff here or a different riff, he would add those and write those. So Michael arranged it, and then those beds went to Alessandro and Nathan for writing lyrics and vocal melodies. And I did read in an interview that Michael kind of contributed a bit with that too, as well.
Mm.
With talking with Alessandro, which I was unaware of. I didn't even really realize that, to be honest with you.
Mm.
So it was collaborative. Nice to have a hand in it, and it's fun to do things like that, to see how it'll come out, because then there's a bit of chemistry. If everybody gets a little say-so in it, then everybody can kind of leave their mark on it, and it's not just one person's project.
Yeah, it might feel more like a band than just, maybe someone just writing the stuff. And
Yeah, exactly. I think everybody's personalities come across on
mm,
the record in their playing.
yeah. But how much do you think about, the musicians that will perform it when you write stuff, or do you just go into it like, you get a cool riff and or song idea, or do you like think, how might this fit this singer or this drummer or whatever?
Um, I mean, it depends on when I'm writing. For this particular project, it was mainly them saying, you write the guitar riffs. And I said, okay, well, what kind of sound are we going for? And it was like, well, 80s melodic hard rock. I think they used the word commercial with me, but of course, commercial means nothing these days to
Yeah.
all of us. I mean, we're not exactly going to end up on the radio, so not, at least not on the charts with Katy Perry and the likes.
Mm.
So, I mean, to me, that means okay, write melodic '80s hard rock, which is obviously right up my alley, and so those were the kind of riffs I went for.
Well, what does come to your mind if someone comes to you, hey, write me a melodic 80s hard rock tune? Is there like a certain amount of bands, guitarists, songs? What comes to your head when you kind of think it? Okay, it should be like this.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite bands from that era that fit that description would probably be like Whitesnake and Dokken. I was always a big fan of George Lynch in the
Mm.
days back in the day, and I'm trying to think what else fits that description, but just that kind of style.
Mm.
Yeah, I think even Dio to a degree, even though I'd consider that more maybe edged with metal,
Mm.
maybe not deliberately commercial.
Maybe.
So when somebody says commercial '80s, that's not necessarily. I don't know if I throw Dio into that category. Um, but I did love all that stuff. But I just tried to come up with catchy '80s sounding riffs.
Yeah. Because it's just interesting always when you kind of mention to people, 80s hard rock or heavy metal. It tells a lot about the person, what comes to their mind. Because I'm not surprised that you mentioned like Whitesnake and Dokken and maybe Dio a bit. Some people it's like Mötley Crüe or AC/DC or whatever. But
Oh yeah.
yeah, it's
Well,
kind of yeah,
yeah. I mean, I would consider AC/DC more just like straight ahead hard
yeah,
rock,
yeah.
than again, I mean, a lot of those songs are really hooky, those AC/DC songs, but not necessarily like that standard melodic rock, so to
Mm,
speak.
yeah. More maybe more edge blues, whatever to
Yeah.
them, you know.
The
Yeah.
TNT.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
not like yeah, there's a difference.
I mean, but I love AC/DC,
Yeah.
and I mean, I love all the music really from that era. I grew up on a lot of that, and I would include in that um, bands that I forget a lot of times. Like I forget to mention Queensryche a lot. I grew
Oh,
up
yeah.
loving all their records too, but I would consider them almost more like progressive than commercial. They were not necessarily like a band that was going for a commercial sound. And I always loved Rush, and I always loved all the '70s kind of stuff too. I mean, I loved Led Zeppelin, and so I mean, as far as focusing that specifically, like that '80s commercial hard rock, those are the ones that come to mind for me. I think underrated too. A lot of for me because I grew up in a lot of the guitar albums, the vocal songs that Yngwie
Mm.
had. I liked a lot of those, especially the ones he wrote with Joe Lynn Turner. I thought were
Mm.
very catchy and kind of that kind
Yeah.
of commercial '80s hard rock sound. Even though he would shred in the solo and everything, but that was part
Yeah.
of the '80s as well. But maybe not as much the LA thing.
Mm.
Um, I loved Motley Crue's "Shout at the Devil," but
Mm.
when I was a kid, but that was pretty much my history with Motley Crue. They lost me on the next one, and obviously from time to time I'd hear a single and I go, "That's pretty cool." And I like a lot of the Rat stuff too. The Rat songs come to mind, but mm, some of that stuff, yeah. I mean, if I had to pick my favorites from that era, I would say more along the lines. I even used to listen to Stryper when I was a kid. I had the Stryper
Yeah.
record.
We all have our striper
So I mean,
past.
I think that fits
Yeah.
into it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
a funny story. I mean, I had a friend of mine when I was in school. Michael was just a kid too. I don't want to make it sound like he's a million years older than me. I mean, he was just a young guy playing in Stryper, but he said, "Hey, I've got a ticket to go see this Christian hard rock band tonight. They're awesome. You want to go?" And I was like, I don't know. And he's like, "No, I'm telling you, man, they're great. You got to go see these guys." So I went to go see Stryper without having heard a song. I think it was the
Mm.
Soldiers Under Command tour,
Mhm.
and I loved it. I thought they were great. They put on a killer show, and they sounded great. And so I ended up that I always say records, but we were buying cassettes. Let's be honest. This
Yeah.
is like so went out and got the Stryper cassettes and but I very
Yeah.
Scorpions. The Scorpion. I always got to include the Scorpions too. I was a big Scorpions fan growing up, and Iron Maiden. Although I definitely don't include Iron Maiden in that commercial '80s hard rock, but
Yeah.
I grew up liking pretty much all things '80s hard rock, and then because the guitar scene was so big at the time, also other styles because it was more acceptable back then to go listen to Al Di Meola or things like that
Yeah.
weren't '80s hard rock, just because Al Di Meola is an amazing guitar player, and so I grew up listening to a lot of those albums too. Steve Morse, Joe Satriani and Steve Vai, but of course those are instrumental albums and maybe not the first thing that comes to mind if you talk about iconic.
Well, some people, in a sense, I would say they're all iconic in some sense, definitely. And it
No,
was
no, I just mean
yeah,
comparing it to the project.
of course.
So I guess the first things that would come to mind would be like that Whitesnake '87 album was really that for me that was like the perfection of that '80s hard rock melodic sound. I mean, that was a
Mm.
monster record
Yeah.
with great guitar playing on it, and I say what you will. I loved a lot of the Dokken stuff growing up. I mean, George was a great guitar player, and
That's
Jeff
true. Mm.
Wilson was an amazing talent, and they wrote a lot of very catchy songs.
Yeah. The thing with a lot of the bands, Ducken and Striper, and maybe, let's say like some Great White or Poison or whatever, these people had like, you can say whatever you want about the music, but usually the guitar players and musicians were like top notch, they're awesome players. So, and
Yeah,
it
yeah,
got catchy stuff. You mentioned like Queensryche. It's not what comes to your mind when you talk about this stuff, but they had some great songs. And it's funny that you said like maybe not the commercial stuff, but even the bands that did stuff like that, they might end up having like a hit, like
yeah.
Silent Lucidity or I Don't Believe in Love. So
Yeah.
that's also good. Maybe that's the thing with you. Whoever knows that maybe you're not like this might not play on the radio, but who knows? Maybe there's a song or two that
Yeah.
really ring with people.
I always try and say, on the heavy metal side, Ozzy, Black Sabbath, Iron Maiden, even the Metallica stuff, and then I'd say all the commercial melodic bands that we've discussed. And then when I was talking about progressive, I usually name Rush, Yes. I love the Trevor Rabin era Yes stuff. I think
Mm,
that's so underrated.
yes.
Trevor is amazing. Amazing singer and writer and producer, and Rush, yes, and I throw Queensryche into that category just because I think stuff like Rage for Order was so ahead of its time.
True.
When that record was out, that was like, wow, what is this? It's awesome, but what is it? They didn't sound like anybody else. They had their own thing. Um, and all the guitar records that we talked about. And then the classic rock stuff. I liked a lot of classic rock even as a kid, um, listening to Pink Floyd or Zeppelin, Hendrix. I loved all that stuff as a kid too, even when the 80s were in.
Mm. Talking a bit, you mentioned that you listened to those bands when you were a kid, but also, if I remember right, you were raised in like a classical music household. Am I right with that?
Yeah, my parents were classical musicians, so they had me going learning about music really early.
Mm,
Cello and piano at a very young age, and I wasn't all that into it because I was really young,
mm,
and it was really AC/DC then when I was 11, where I saw Angus Young, and I went, "That guy's the coolest guy I've ever seen in my life. I want to be him."
mm.
I didn't realize I was going to grow up to be about a foot and a half taller than he is, and look nothing like him or anything. But seeing him, I thought that's what I want to be like. So I love all his energy on stage, and I still really do. Back in Black for me is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, hard rock record of all time too. So that maybe doesn't fall into that same category of the commercial thing, but it just fucking kick ass record. Those
It's,
songs are so great. There's not a bad song on Back in Black, and it's
yeah,
recorded just beautifully. It's that's a fantastic
yeah.
record.
It's so funny to kind of, I understand what you mean, but to be like, it's not commercial when it's one of the most sold
I know.
records out
Yeah, I know.
there. But I
Yeah,
understand what you mean. It wasn't
yeah,
maybe conceived with the idea that let's make a number one record, which it ended up being. So,
yeah.
that,
Right.
but I
Mhm.
understand what you mean. Yeah, definitely. Do you think that any of the, even if you didn't like the classical music, that any of the idea of like, because a lot of the instrumentals in classical music world are like virtuosic, they play well. Did any of that catch up with you, or like classical music in any other way now that you look back?
Well, I think it just having music around the house at such a young age, it just kind of the younger you are, you are, so the more that kind of lives in your soul and your mind as you grow older. Just growing up, listening to it constantly, learning to read music when I was little, and that gave me a sense of rhythm and pitch. I knew how to count. I could hear as soon as my friend showed me a power chord on guitar, I could play all kinds of songs because I went, "Oh, you mean that's it? You just move
Yeah.
this chord around?" And but that because my ear was good already, it allowed me to figure out a lot of songs right away.
Mm.
So having that experience of, even though I hated it at the time, taking all those lessons as a kid helped. It helped jumpstart me on guitar.
Mm. You mentioned Aldi Meola, so you obviously have some sort of liking towards that sort of jazz music. Is there anything same with classical, or do you just not listen to any of that?
No, I'm a terrible listener these days because I
Mm.
work on music so much.
Yeah.
But definitely over the years, there's plenty of times I'll put on classical as like background music. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty open-minded, There's no doubt that the rock that we're talking about is the most like the um, most consuming or
Mm.
most interesting to me. That I know more about all that than all the other styles. But on guitar, I've studied all the different styles. I mean, I went to college for 2 years for classical guitar, and I had even played it. for a couple years during high school too. So I was really balancing that with being in a band, and so I took proper classical guitar as well and gave recitals and things of that nature. And I definitely got all my Aebersold play along jazz CDs and did all that stuff
Classic.
too. And yeah, I worked on trying to be able to play through the standards, which I can do if you keep the chart in front of me. If the chart's gone, I'm fucked, you know.
Yeah, you.
For me to, it's very hard for me to remember all the changes in the jazz songs.
Yeah,
That's something that I wish I was better at everything, mate. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I'd like to be better at every area of guitar, but that's kind of where my shortcomings are with when it comes to playing jazz. But I like that I can get through the changes if I have to. I can look at a chart and play through jazz standards and whatnot.
yeah. There's no shame in keeping a real book with you and going to a jam session and playing
There's
some.
no shame in any of it. I think it
Yeah,
all, the more you learn about music, the better musician you are. So I think it's good, just that's time well spent as opposed to playing video games or something like that.
yeah, very, very much so. So Whitesnake is coming to Finland in a couple of weeks' time. Do you have any memories from like Finland in any way, or or is it all just a blur because you travel so much?
Yeah, I mean, just a very tiny bit from being able to walk around and see the sights, and believe I was there with Cher as well. I
Mm,
want to say a couple years ago. So um, yeah, I mean, I'm not a big like sightseer per se. I usually will take whatever hotel we're at and take a long
mm,
walk around for an hour in the area and just kind of absorb a little bit of the culture, and that's kind of what I end up seeing.
yeah, that's
Uh,
very good. Do
yeah.
you have something to say maybe that what fans can expect from this, farewell tour? The people in Finland coming to see Whitesnake for maybe the last time.
Well, it's everybody's opportunity to come out and say goodbye to David and have David say thank you for a wonderful 50 years or so. He's been quite emotional on some of the shows already here out of the gate. It's I think it's an emotional tour for him. He just wants to thank everybody for a wonderful career, which I think
Mm.
is lovely.
Yeah, and the people want to thank him, so and you guys for all you've done. So that's good.
Well, we're just, I mean, I've played a very small role in terms of the history that
But it's a
he's
role.
well, I think it's important for me to keep things in perspective, but it's also important for me to do the very best I can with it and understand the importance of it, which I
Yeah,
think is that's important rather than oh, who cares?
yeah,
I care.
yeah,
I care.
yeah, and there are
About it.
people who care. Yeah,
I want it to be a great last run for him. I think he's a great guy. He's been nothing but wonderful to me since I've joined the band. So I would really love to see him have a great last run.
he will, and it's so awesome that you're there to help that. You're doing your part in every way you can.
Yeah, trying my best, as they say, right?
Yeah, you're doing your best. Do
Yeah.
you have any plans with Iconic to some tours after the album is released?
I would love to. It's going to be difficult with everybody's schedules. I know it's
Mm,
the same old story everybody hears with all these albums, but you never know. I mean, I'm up for it. I think it would be a lot of fun to play live with these guys. But this year, I mean, I'm really working through the whole year. The Whitesnake tour is going to take me straight up into the Trans-Siberian Orchestra tour that I do in November, December. And I don't think that Whitesnake is going to be able to hit every territory in 2022. So I'd imagine more of the same in 2023, that Whitesnake will be active for at least, part of that year, and have Trans-Siberian Orchestra again. But if there's a window that's there and Michael's not playing with Stryper and Nathan's not out with Inglorious, then let's go. Be
yeah.
fun.
So you're a busy guy, but have you had any time working on maybe a new solo album or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm working on my next Joel Hoekstra's 13 record right now while I'm on the road. Vinny, I got all the riffs over to Vinny Appice. He's doing his drum tracks right now. So periodically, every 2, 3 days right now, I get a drum track over from him saying, "Hey, check this out. Do you like this?" And so yeah, I'm definitely that's in the works as well.
Very cool.
Mhm.
For the last question, I would like to know, is there something that you would like to see change in the music industry? Obviously, a lot of things are changing, but is there something that you would really like to see changed for the better?
Well, I think it's very important now that we're heavily in the digital world here and the online world to see artists get more money from streaming. I think it would be great, not just for myself, but for especially for younger struggling artists, and it might encourage more people to make music and release it and um, maybe offer some kind of a platform. I think it's hard for young musicians to make money playing live,
Mm,
and then if you take away any money that they can make online too, and it's just like everything else in the world. It all seems to be the top 1% making all that money, you know.
mm.
So you get the CEO of Spotify, who's a billionaire, and then people are
Yeah,
making like a portion of a penny for a stream. It just seems but outside of that, I mean that with the understanding that you should play music for the love of it anyway, um, not necessarily anything in terms of I wish we would go back to this style of music or anything like that. I just think it's be nice if people could play and be able to make a good living doing it. It would encourage people to be musicians more rather than have it be so extremely difficult. It would be frightening for me to be a very young
mm,
musician right now and be looking at like how do I break a band
yeah,
and become known. It's oh my gosh, it's a scary thought.
yeah. It's hard out there. Maybe things will change for the better when we see
Maybe
how they
you
are.
don't know. Yeah, I mean, there's always hope. You know, I
There
know
is.
that definitely been a little bit of restructuring with that, but there needs to be much more. I think
True.
to see artists receive what they deserve when their song is streamed, because that's where it's all headed. Rather than buying. It's more headed towards streaming. So I
Yeah,
think it's important that yeah, figure that out. But you
yeah,
know, I can't change
yeah,
the world. I tend not to worry too much about these things because there's not much I can do.
yeah. But I think it helps that you speak about these things and other people, speak loudly about stuff like this. Maybe it reaches someone, who can do something.
Yeah,
Hopefully.
doubtful, but helpful.
Hopefully.
I mean, the best I can do pretty much every day is wake up and try my best to just play my best and work hard every day in music. Because obviously, I'm always still concerned about my dreams as well. Just being able to do everything I can, do the best I can. So, but I do wish for the future. A lot of the kids I see coming up that they are able to make a living doing this.
Yeah, that's all good that you do your part. Thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure talking with you. I hope you all the health and strength with your stuff. You have a lot of things to do.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. I need it. I know. Yeah, so definitely getting out there. I'm a little bit achier because
Yeah.
we haven't been out in a couple years now, and I've had Trans Siberian Orchestra, but I do notice after the first few Whitesnake shows, my body hurts.
Mm. Now, let's
Oh,
hope
I
for the
need
best.
need a massage, you know.
Oh yeah, get one. There, you need one. Thank you so much, sir, and all the best to you.
All right. Likewise, brother. Have a good
Thank
one.
you.
Looking
You
forward
too.
to it. All right.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.